Hello and welcome back to the channel. Now, it's been a while since I've done a full service on the Nissan Juke, and I've also realised we need to look at the handbrake. The handbrake is not very happy at all, getting a bit of a creak from it, and we can also feel that it's not binding both sides properly. At the same time, I think we're going to replace all the discs and the pads and do oil change, oil filter and a fuel filter. So I'm going to put a few markers in this video, so if you need to jump to something, just take a look at the description and it'll go through all. And I'll also put all of the parts that I've used. I've ordered from Autodoc this time. It's not sponsored by Autodoc or anything like that, but I found the pricing and the parts nice and easy. So let's get into the video and let's have a look at what we're going to do first. Okay, so it's going to be discs and pads from the front. At the back, you can see they're quite large discs, because inside the disc you also have the drum brakes, which is the rear handbrake, and I think that's where the problem is. I've got a feeling that the drum brakes have fallen apart, either the pads have come off, something like that, or it's not quite working right, and also the pads are getting quite low. Let's get one of these wheels off, take a look, and let's see what we've got inside. I think it's this side that's the bit that's not binding, or at least creaking. So this might be our problematic side. Easy enough, that's the wheel off. You can see that's where you can get the adjuster for the handbrake, but we're going to be taking the disc and changing the pads. So let me find out what bolt we need to do this. Looks like we can do the trick of spinning the caliper up, so loosen both, lift the caliper up, and we should be able to get our brake shoes off. Then we'll need to take the carrier off to be able to get the disc. It doesn't look like there's any retaining screws. I'll take the rubber grommet off just to make sure, but if I remember rightly, that's just a hole in for adjusting the brakes. So first things first, let's get the brake caliper spun off. It's a 14 standard socket for the caliper. Oh, that's not too bad actually. That's just come undone. So far not bad going. It's obviously famous last words. Top one's sometimes a bit fiddly because you've got the brake line in the way and you want to be careful. That's not getting a good seat on it. Might use a longer socket, that might help, so that I'm not having to put as much pressure on the brake line. Tell you what, better still, use a ring spanner. Get it on there. That means it's clearing the brake line quite nicely. And it's starting to turn. It's quite tough actually. Can't actually see what I'm doing, can you? There you go. See, the bottom one is loosening quite nicely. That one's almost out now. It will actually move. There we go. We can lift this off now, just being careful because the brake line doesn't have an awful lot of give, I've noticed on this car. So I'm actually thinking it would be a good idea just to keep going. Take the top one off, and that means I can lift the caliper off completely, move it back there, and then it's safe out of the way. So I think I'll do that. I'll keep persisting with this one and get it released. But you know, I'm still on trying to take this out, and there's a couple of things I've noticed. First of all, it's very shiny in there, and there's also a bit of a white substance, which is either corrosion between metals or someone's put something like a Loctite or something like that on it, which is a bit pointless for these sort of things, but it just keeps trying to be undone. And I'm sure I'm past the threaded point, which would suggest that part of it has got seized inside and just isn't coming undone. Because if you take a look at the lower bolt, let me just show you the lower bolt, you can see the threaded element is just up here, and the rest of this is the slide pin that the caliper can move on. So there's only this amount of thread, and looking at this, I must be right at the edge of the thread, so I can't see that this is still threaded and held on, which makes me think it's stuck somehow, which is my first problem. So I'm going to keep spinning it, a bit more penetrating fluid, give it a few taps, see if this will come out. Okay, I've moved on to the caliper carrier, and these are what was this? I think this is a 17. Yeah, 17. And I've managed to get the extension on my impact, and we should be able to now get these off. The lower one's a bit easier to get to, as you can see. Wow. I don't think these have ever come off. Be curious to look and see whether these are actual original Nissan parts, because these to me don't feel like they've ever come off, because they are really well seized on. Better put the camera down and catch the caliper. There we go. There's the whole thing off. We can look at the brake pads. They've actually got a bit of chunk, but you know what? I think they're worth replacing. I'll give it all a bit of a wire brush and a clean up. But next thing is take the disc off. Taking the disc off normally goes one of two ways. Either it's impossible because the shoes are pressing and holding on, or take it off, everything from inside explodes. Let's see what this one's going to be. Oh, it's got movement. There is next to no shoe material left on those, which is exactly what I suspected. You can see, I mean, they are all intact, but they're also not moving very much either. So yeah, they need to come off, replacements on, clean up all the material. I'll go and get the replacement parts. Got Ridex brake pads, Ridex disc, Denkerman shoes. I also got the fitting kit in case any of the parts in there need replacing as well. You never quite tell. But let's have a look at the shoes. Let's compare them up. So on the current shoes, you can see we have a flat that sits at the top. That's about there. Lengthwise looks about right. One of them is longer than the other, so let me just compare those up. Little tip as well, take a photo of where everything goes, so you can see you've got your central plate which kind of balances things. You've got a small stocky screw spring that side. You've got the longer spring that side. Down there you've got one of the retaining clips, you can just see it there. You can see the retaining clip clearer on that side, and that all came in my fitting kit. So I've got replacements for all of those. So I think because I've got them, I'm going to replace them. So you can see there's the stocky spring, there's the longer spring, retaining clips, and the pins that go on the other side of the retaining clip. Now it's normally this point where everything pings apart and gets interesting, so I'm going to start undoing all of these. I don't think this is the one where you twist the pin at the back. Let's just look at the new fitting kit. Yeah, you can see there's nothing to spin or screw at the back, but we do have a flat on the front, which is where the clip pushes in and turns. So what that means is we need to turn the clip to release it. Now I know a lot of you will be shouting at me right now saying, yep, this is standard, this is the way that you do all of them, they're all practically the same. Well, they are and they aren't, that's the thing. Until you actually get in here and have a look, I would never say they're all identical. They're all similar, they've all got a similar technique, but they all have the little intricacies. There we go, that's not too bad. That's that first clip off. I've probably had to dub most of the video up until now because I realised I don't think my microphone was working. Pins out, and now there's the adjuster. You can see that's the manual adjuster that turns and adjusts the amount of in and out. Now all I'm going to do is I'm just going to use pliers to kind of reach in and take some of the tension off, if I can, from this spring. See if that'll work. Of course, again, as usual, doing this one-handed with a camera does not really help things. So actually, I think I'm going to tackle this from the top, because the top comes apart much easier. You can see kind of splits. So if I remove the spring from the top here, maybe a large screwdriver. No, okay, keep going with a pair of pliers. And again, I know that lots of you will be screaming at me saying there's a better way of doing this. Well, everyone seems to have a different way. There we go, that's that spring released. Just leave that there. Oh yeah, I didn't take that clip off, did I? Okay, so you can see the handbrake lever mechanism here. It just simply pushes in as a pin there. Now I do like to try and take these out as intact as I can, because then what I can do is I can put them on the ground and I can make the new one up in the same way and try and fit it together in the same way, because sometimes they can be a bit like a jigsaw. Now, looking at it, I would say that's how a jigsaw fits together. Now, just to put it back together, first thing is I'm going to take the manual adjuster off Now I'm going to give this a clean up first, because there's nothing worse than this not sliding and not moving freely. So a little bit of grease, not much, just to help that move, will make the job so much easier. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wind it in. I've put a bit of copper slip on either side. I'm going to wind it in a reasonably large amount, and then put it back so it looks like it's in about the same position we had it in before. Well, the microphone decided to completely stop working about this point, so I'll just have to dub over this bit. You can see I've got the springs vaguely in the right place, and then get the shoes back on, trying to line everything up. Now the trick here is to get the pins into the holes so that they're lining up, and get them clipped in, which will help you locate everything together. And that's what I'm going to do in just a second. We'll get the pins through the holes and then get the clips in place. And this is how I found the easiest way of doing this, which is hold the pin at the back. You'll see I'll put my finger around the back in a second, and then you can see the clip. I can then push in place with the pliers and then do a final twist to turn the pin and lock it in place. So you can see, lining it up like this, my finger at the back, pushing the pin through to keep it pushed out, and then use the pliers to compress the clip like this, grab the pin and give it a quarter of a turn, and that'll grab it like that. That's it now fastened. So same on the other side now. The moment I turn the camera off, of course, it slides straight in, just using the same way, so just persistence. I've also put the top flat spacer in, and you can see it's now all sat quite nicely. The bottom spring is in with the tensioner. I'm now going to put the two top springs back in. That happens a lot. By the way, if you find that you're putting too much stretch on a spring, waggle things around, because remember, it all moves to a degree, and it may just be that you've got things at the wrong angle to go in easily. Just push the spring in, there we go, making sure that it's sat in the recess nicely. And now spot the mistake, and this is why you take a photo before and after. If I show you the before picture of how the spring is, and I show you the after, you can see I had the spring the wrong way around, so I corrected that afterwards. Let's get our new disc ready. Quick clean with brake cleaner. This just removes any manufacturing oils. It's not always needed anymore, but I still do it regardless. Okay, that's rested in place. Now actually, this has just reminded me, you need the rubber grommet off the old one, because we're going to put that in place once we've adjusted it. Now what you might find is this is because the new shoes are thicker and are pushing against it, so it's jamming the brake. What we need to do is take it off, go down to our adjuster and take a bit of slack off. And what I would suggest is when you do that, also give this a little bit of manual jiggling about, and try a test fitting again, and just keep doing this process until you can get it on smoothly without too much force. I'm not going to lie, that took a lot of doing to get that back on. The new pads were that tight. Now I don't know whether that's just tolerances of aftermarket stuff, because it's also not moving freely. So it's going to be a bit tight. I might need to slacken the adjuster right the way off, check that the handbrake is slackened right off as well to make sure they're not binding too much. But yeah, it's always the problem with brake shoes. They're always a bit too tight when you put them on, and they'll bind a little bit. So I'm going to keep going, put everything back together, try to get things sorted out, see if I can get it adjusted just so it's not catching quite as tight, but at least it's all back on. Just fastening the caliper carrier back on, then I can get my new brake pads on. So there's a bit of info. The brake wear indicator is on the inside and this is passenger side. So I'm going to match that up, a little bit of copper slip on it so that these slide in and out the carrier nicely. What I thought I'd show you is I finally got that top bolt out from the top. Actually, let me just rest the caliper because I don't want that dangling on the pipe whilst I'm talking. So I finally got this out. Now I ended up having to use the impact to keep it spinning loads and loads because the caliper carrier bolt, you can see the thread is only at the head, which means it goes in like that, but then it should slide on this piece, and you can see the problem. That's not sliding. So that means the caliper is not free to move. Now I don't know, is it the bolt? Yeah, the bolt doesn't seem too bad, so it must be this potentially having, oh there we go, it's starting to free up. I wonder if it's just full of rubbish, so I'm going to try and clean it out as best as I can so that it can actually slide on the caliper. That took a load of doing. I'm not sure how good this bolt is. In an ideal world I would get a couple of replacements. Actually, looking at it, is it bent? No, I think it's straight, but I'm going to clean this up and see if I can clean it out. But that would explain why this wouldn't come out, and it may also explain why we were getting a bit of sticky brake. Well, you can see it's all back together. Got the new pads on. The top slider, once I'd cleaned it up, started to slide quite nicely, so I think that's going to work quite nicely. We've got a bit of movement on there. Did have to push the piston back. Now these are just simple push back. You don't have to use a wind tool or anything like that, so that does make things a little bit easier. Everything's all back in place now. I'm going to get the wheel on, give it a spin, and just double check everything looks okay. Now I've got to admit, this took a lot more than I expected. I was hoping to have had both sides done by now. I think I'm going to have to do the other side tomorrow. Remember, you do need to do them in pairs. Hopefully the other side is going to be a little bit easier. I'd also planned on doing a full service on this, but this has taken most of the day to get sorted. It just shows something slowing you down can really make a difference. I'm probably going to leave it there for this video. Hope this has been useful to you. Some of the tools that I've used, I'll put links down below so you can find out as well if you've got a Nissan Juke and you need to do the same job. I tell you what, it has taken a while, so it is a reminder. Just one stuck bolt can take a long time. So hope you've enjoyed the video. Please put a thumbs up, a like down the bottom, because that really helps out with my channel, and I'll see you next time.